When I saw the prelims question paper, I knew 100 questions. Wow, I knew everything. And when I started writing the answers, there was a complete blackout. I forgot everything. I could not recollect anything. And I failed in the prelims exam. Or else, my mark would have been 123.6 in the prelims exam. That was a prelims failure justification that you just heard. Hi, hello, this is Arjun R. Shaankar and welcome to LearnStroke. This time, we decided to do something very interesting, something very fascinating and something even very funny. We decided to make a small video on the prelims failure justification. That means, let's talk about some justifications which people normally tell whenever they fail an exam. This not only is limited to an examination, because it is human tendency to justify yourself whenever you fail in something. You always come up with some justification. This is the reason why I failed. So I thought, let's keep something funny. So you can sit back, enjoy and watch this session and find out what are the most interesting and fascinating justifications that normally people say whenever you fail in a prelims examination. But before you justify, while you watch this session, please keep in mind, whenever there is a justification, there should be a serious scope for an introspection. And in today's session, in a funny manner, we'll find out for every justification, there should have been a good introspection also. So sit back and enjoy prelims failure justification. It was the examination day. And like every other aspirant, I was actually holding the paper in my hand and I was slowly scanning through the papers. And suddenly, it was an ecstatic feel. All the 100 questions were questions which I knew. I could not control my emotions and I was so happy. And in my mind, I've decided that this is going to be your year. I was saying it to myself. And with a lot of aggression and happiness and excitement, I took the OMR sheet and I started bubbling it one by one. After 10 minutes, I don't know what happened. It was a complete blackout. I forgot everything and slowly, I became a blank slate without knowing anything. I was struggling to fill the answer sheet. Every time I looked into the question, I was only feeling blankness. I even kept my pen down for some time and I even started thinking about my preparation days. Everything was over. And just like every time happens, after 2 hours, the examiner took the OMR sheet away and I was only gazing through that. I thought that my successful year was slowly moving away. Finally, like everybody moves after the exam, the results came out and I was actually searching into the PDF of the computer and I was eagerly searching for my name in the system. The PDF did not generate my number. Initially, it was a small heartbreak, but still, I did a search again. I don't know how many times I searched my roll number in the final PDF list. But the computer never generated my name. It was again a hard feeling. People started to ask, what happened to you? I thought you're going to clear it. Then I checked my answer key. I checked one answer key. Then I realized if everything would have been right, if our answers were perfectly right, I would have got a score of 128.6. Then for another perspective, I checked another key. And in that key, my scores were 135.6. That was the range of my marks in that exam. But unfortunately, I failed in that. What a heartbreak. After the preliminary examination, everybody were checking their answer sheets. And I saw a lot of people cheering after seeing their marks. And I was just looking at myself in the mirror. All of the people who scored 95, 100 and even 85 were hopeful that they will clear the prelims. I was just standing there looking at the scorecard of my prelims performance and I was seeing my mark 120. But still I was happy. I knew I was going to fail because my CSAT scores were 61.5. My CSAT score were absolutely low. I have failed in CSAT. The only reason why I'm not going to qualify the prelims examination. The next interesting justification is what we call it as a flip effect. What is a flip effect? Very much similar to what happens in a prelims examination when you don't remember anything. That means when you're seeing the question paper, like every time, you remember all the 100 questions, but this time you don't become blank. You still know the answers, but there is a phenomenon called as flip effect coming here, which many of the aspirants can relate to. You're taking the pen, you're trying to solve the questions. Unlike the previous time, you're not getting blank. But what happens is when you start solving the questions, you feel as if option A is flipping to B. I think it is option B. I think it is option D. For one moment, you feel that all the options in the question are correct. Is that a very pathetic situation? I'm sure a lot of aspirants might have related to this phenomenon, which we call as a flip effect. I don't know why after this exam, some people call themselves, what if I am the Karna of modern age? The great Karna who forgets everything when the most important turn of his life comes. Maybe in this UPSC Civil Service examination, I am a modern age Karna. Next is a magic mix of your birth star, zodiac sign, kundli, horoscope, astrologers, jyotishi, anything. I think you're trying to get what I'm trying to tell. This is in absolute no disregard to anybody's belief or anybody's aspirations, but this is something that I've heard a lot of times from the aspirants, that I failed in the prelims examination only because my time hasn't come. And that time will come soon. I've heard this thing a lot of time. Maybe you believe truly in that. I have immense regards and respect for your feelings. But if that year, which you will clear, which is yet to come, will come in 2 or 3 years, don't stop preparing. Keep preparing. Who knows? Sometimes your karma can also beat your destiny. So keep trying. This was a time when I really failed in the prelims examination that I thought that I should have been a bubbling Raja. Bubbling Raja. Because the biggest enemy for my examination was my OMR sheet. Like every time, I knew all the questions, and this time, no blankness, no karna. I knew all the answers perfectly, but I couldn't be a bubble Raja. That means for the question number 1, I marked the OMR in 2, and for 3 in 4, 5 in 6, 7 in 8, I made a complete jumble of my OMR sheet. Now I realize I should have been a bubble Raja. So my bubbling skills in the OMR sheet is the reason why I failed in the examination. Or else, probably I would have been the topper of the civil service exam prelims. The graph in my Modometer was fluctuating. Yeah, you heard it right. Modometer. The meter which measures my mood swings. And that is the biggest reason why I failed in this exam. Because of my mood swings. Because just before, 2-3 days before the examination, I had a big fight with my father, my mother, with my family. My girlfriend left. My boyfriend ditched me. Or due to some other things. That Modometer graph heavily fluctuated during the prelims examination, and I was too much into stress that I could not concentrate. My complete focus was out. And that is the reason why I failed in the prelims examination. This year's UPSC paper was the toughest ever in the history of UPSC preliminary examination. I've heard people talking, especially when after the examination, when somebody from your family, especially your father, mother, brother, sister, anybody who calls and inquires about how the examination went, I've heard people telling it was the most toughest paper ever in the history of UPSC paper. People were actually crying in the examination hall, and it was a complete UPSC pandemic. After the examination, I saw people crying and walking through the streets, coming out of the schools and colleges, out of the examination centers, and everybody was actually telling, oh my God, this is the most toughest paper ever created. And I've also heard, especially the people who hear this, ask the same question. But I think in spite of this, every time UPSC is getting 10,000 people who clears preliminary examination and write mains. So how come that is possible? I failed in the prelims examination because this year's prelims examination was basically an engineer's paper. It was a medical student's paper. It was an agricultural paper. It was an environmental science paper. And I am actually from the arts background. That's why I failed. Seriously, I failed because that was not my paper. The reason why I failed my preliminary examination is because of the 50-50. This is what a student said to me. And I said to him, the only 50-50 that I know is Britannia 50-50. He said, no sir, the reason why I failed is 50-50. He was talking about a 50-50 scenario and I was just thinking, what is it 50-50? Then he said, the reason why I failed in the examination is because I knew all the questions. Cliche, I have heard this. He said, I know all the questions and I was solving the questions while coming to the answers of the questions. He was telling me that I knew all the answers, but I had a small confusion, A or B, or C or D, or A or C, or B or D. 100 questions, I had the same conclusion called as A or B, B or D. That means he or she could eliminate almost 50-50. So the reason why I failed in the civil service examination preliminary is because of this 50-50 scenario. I am the most unluckiest creature or Homo sapien or human being ever born on this face of planet Earth. I'm the most unluckiest human ever born. I've heard people telling this a lot of times, and no matter what happens, whether it is a civil service preliminary examination or any other examination, whatever I do, I always fail because I'm the most unluckiest person in the face of the earth. That was a wonderful tale of so many reactions and justifications, and I think a lot of UPSC aspirants who have failed in the prelims examination must have related to this. I think the fun-filled package now can be kept at bay, and now I think let's discuss the serious aspects from that fun-filled journey. I think all the reactions that you just heard must be something that you've always heard from your friend circles or from your preparation circles, and I'm sure many of you must have related to it. And let's take out that serious aspects which is hidden inside all the reactions which we discussed. What does that point to? Can you find a common factor? I think the biggest common factor when you put it out is one thing which again comes out, which is called as understanding the subjects and concept clarity. Finally, all the problems come down to two big issues. I think just take an example of the justifications which we have done. A person writing the preliminary examination and is absolutely going blank or a blackout. Does that really happen if you're really that kind of prepared? If you're really prepared and focused and determined that I want to get it this time, do you think this blankness or blackout will ever work? Think it out. And I think we also discussed about that flip effect. I think many of you must have really related to the flip effect because that happens with almost all the aspirants every time. You know the answers and you finally get stuck in the options, whether it is A, B, C, D. That's very common. Again, I'm asking that moot question. If your concept clarity and your basic understanding about a subject is very clear, do you think this will happen? And I also wanted to talk about that situation where we discussed that in the justifications is one that an aspirant actually inside the hall says that this is the most toughest examination and the everybody who is writing the examination is actually crying. Nobody is going to clear. It's super damn tough paper. But have you ever thought that every time when you say the statement, let's say that it is the most toughest examination, haven't you noticed one thing? In spite of it being very tough, there are always thousands of people who qualify the prelims examination and write the mains examination. How is that possible? And adding to that, the justification of people saying that this was an engineer's paper, this was a medical paper, this was more of a science and technology paper, and an arts graduate is not gonna clear. UPSC keeps asking questions from different areas, and that's why they keep the questions as unpredictable. Whether it is a science paper or an environmental paper, do you think that only scientists or people from an environmental background clear this examination? Even though it's a medical paper or an engineering paper, you always have art students clearing the examination. So how is that possible? So that means, again, it points out to the statement that if you are damn clear about what you want, if your preparation is very strong, basically if you have that understanding, such things won't happen. And definitely, I think I can also add one more thing in this, the 50-50 effect. We were talking about the 50-50 effect and not the Britannia 50-50. When we talk about the 50-50 effect, it clearly shows that you don't have that kind of a practice. Because you know the topic, that means your concept clarity has a big issue. That means you're not able to eliminate between the options. And this is also an offshoot of another thing which is called as the bubble raja. We talked about the bubble raja. You know what you mean by bubble raja. Why does that happen? Why does your answers for the third question goes into the fourth question? Or the fourth question's answer goes into the fifth question? It is basically because you don't have that kind of a concentration or focus while you write the examination. So you talk about understanding, concept clarity, focus, concentration, practice. I think majority of the things are solved. And one more thing, I think that is definitely a big thing. That is the fluctuation in the Modometer or the Modograph, which we call as the graph which measures your mood swings. Just like you have heard the myth, you have a problem with your family, you had a fight between your girlfriend, your boyfriend left, anything. This is something that normally happens with every aspirant, every human being. Who is a human being without problems and issues? You have multiple things in your life happening. And sometimes I think I'll mark 10% out of this. 10% of things definitely hits us. But I want to ask a very blunt question here. Then what do you expect yourself to become? You're writing this examination, the prestigious examination, to become a bureaucrat who wants to bring change into the society. Then if you're not able to handle stress, so what do you think? When you become a bureaucrat or a person who are going to move the chariots of administration in this country, what do you think is the level of pressure building up on your mind? I think hundreds and thousands and tons of pressures will be bombarding you on your brain every day when you are in administration or when you are a civil servant. So I think basically the fluctuation in a Modograph should be minimized if you want to be a real bureaucrat. I think you should learn to handle or tackle or think in extreme or intense pressure situations like this. I think this matters a lot. While you solve any question papers, any questions, you get a lot of stress, and I think you should be able to cope up and tackle and handle that kind of a stress. Trust me, if you truly do that, you will not be a Karna anymore. You will solve many of the things which you thought was difficult. And one more thing, I think we have learned almost all the things from the funny aspect, the serious things. I think one thing which is going to be important is, am I the most unluckiest person in the world? Because this is one such thing that people normally say. And I think we can also relate this to the horoscopes and the time that is yet to come, because your astrologer said that your time is not going to come. And the time is going to come after 3 or 4 years. Perfectly all right. Respect that. But one thing, keep trying. Don't wait for 4 or 5 years only because your time is going to come after 4 years. Why not just work right from now? Who knows, as I said in the Justification series, who knows, maybe your karma can actually beat the destiny. And coming on to the luck factor, do you think you're really unlucky? You're that kind of an unlucky? And do you think luck as such plays a big role in civil service examination or in any examination or in your life? I think I remember a very famous quote by Thomas Jefferson who said that, I think you get more luck when you work more harder. And I think you are all students of civil services, you must have read in your history, and that brings me into your mind the great personality called as Ajivika, especially Makhali Gosala, because he was a great propounder of Niyati. So I think students will actually be in a split, whether you will believe in your karma or whether you believe in your destiny. So whatever that, let karma matters or let destiny matters, I think you should start working. And the more you work, I think luck is going to favor you. So, funny part apart, we have heard about all the justifications, and I think few things are actually coming up, like concept clarity, strong understanding about your subjects, absolute focus, determination, practice, concentration, and above all, the ability to handle stress. If you do all these things, and I'm sure next time you don't have to come up with all such justifications, and seriously, you can really give the examination absolutely perfectly. Why do people justify? What is the reason for justification? Is it so bad? We have heard a lot of justifications, and you'll be really thinking, is it that bad to justify? Haven't you justified? I have justified many things in my life. I have always given so many justifications for things which I have not done. Is it only limited to me? You don't do that? Normally people don't do that. Then let's see why people justify. It is never a bad thing. And whether it is an examination, whether it is a civil service examination, or whether it is something from your life, people always justify. Why do they justify? You need to find answers, and there are some reasons why people justify, and especially we are talking from the perspective of an examination, so definitely I think I should throw some light on that, why people justify. I think the biggest mechanism or the biggest reason why people justify is because of their ego. I think people ego are bigger than them, and I think to some extent that's perfectly all right. You can have a certain level of ego, and someone asks you, why did you fail in the exam? I have not seen many people who have that courage, who openly says that I did not study, or my study was very weak, my coverage was very low. I haven't seen so many people telling that. I have seen people telling that justifications, it was not right, something like that. And one of the reasons is that ego, because you don't want to give that impression to people that your preparation was not good. Maybe because people have a fear of being judged. Maybe that is one reason. And the next important reason why people normally justify is because of a shielding mechanism. You shield yourself from the outside world and you don't want people to judge you. So that means justifications are sometimes always an escape routes to evade questions from people. You want to run away from the questions of the people, from your family, friend circles. Why did you fail? So sometimes they are actually an escape route to just run away from the reality. It happens. And sometimes justifications are always a means of making yourself comfortable. That means yourself comfortable. Absolutely no harm in that. No harm in that. Purely no harm. And I think one of the big reasons why people justify, or people are made to justify, is because what you call as the burden of hope. There is a big burden of hope being pinned onto your shoulders. That means it pulls you down at some point by lots of burden of hopes of your family, friends, everybody. A lot of people put a lot of hope on you. And I seriously remember a very important or very fascinating dialogue from a movie, Chak De India, when Shah Rukh Khan actually says that यहाँ का हर एक खिलाड़ी अपने स्टेट का चैंपियन है. Like that, everybody of you may be a champion in your school, you may be a champion of your family, you may be a champion of your association, a champion or a topper of your village. So according to all of them, you are that chosen person, like Harry Potter says, you are the chosen one who is going to bring name to their family. I think sometimes that hope really is a burden on your shoulders. I even remember people, whenever the UPSC final list comes out, people switch off their phones, and a lot of phones used to come in the home, and father, mother, sister, brother, everybody used to pick up the calls, and the single question that they get always is, did your son make it? Did your daughter make it? I think that is a very truly disturbing moment for everybody. So these are some of the reasons why an aspirant or a person is forced to say a justification that this has happened, and that is the reason why I could not do it. And I am saying it is absolutely okay, no issues, only if you find out the back end of that reason. Imagine yourself standing and this is the front, which is the reason which you say. Perfectly okay, only if you see the backside. The backside is the reason of the failure. Without knowing that, I don't think merely telling a reason or making a justification will only make you weak. So whenever you make a justification to the public, make it in private, find out what really went wrong in the examination. That makes the big difference for your preparation. Do that, it is going to work. I think we'll give you an illustration also. A scientist or a great person is actually making a machine. Imagine a person is making a machine and the machine is working perfectly. And when you're testing that machine, you see that there is a small error in that machine's lower portion. And the scientist or the person who made it immediately says that engineering fault. This is a mechanical error. Or the people who hear it, oh, that's a mechanical error. Okay, done. But did you find the real problem? When you say this is a mechanical error, go into the depth and find out, and then you will see that maybe a lower portion of the shaft or the screw or some nuts including that were out of proportion or were not facing in a particular angle. I don't know much of a mechanics, so leave it. You go into the depth and find out the real problem. Rather than saying it as an engineering error or a mechanical error, find out what is the real reason. That is how you make things perfect. So whenever you make justifications, no issues, shield yourself from the pressure building inside to go on. But when you do that, make sure you find the back end and solve the real issue. Then you'll make that real difference. That was a wonderful tale of all the justifications of failures that we have just discussed. Keep it a bit funny. You know, the whole thing was basically intended to create a small fun, and out of that fun, we generated a serious discussion also. So even though it was completely for fun, everybody or all the aspirants who are prepared must have related to either of any of the justifications. Basically, that fun element was always there. But we have already told you that there is also a serious element that needs to be picked out from that. And I'm sure all of you will definitely look into all the serious things or the serious notes which came from all the justifications and make the corrections in your preparation. And the whole funny thing did not intend to create or hurt anybody's sentiments, feelings, aspirations, and no disregard to anything, purely for funny thing, purely for fun. And I know the justification series never ends. It is an exhaustive list, and if you find more such list, below the video, you can post all the justifications which you have said or which your friends have said or which you have heard, so that we can watch it, laugh and learn together. This is Arjun R. Shaankar and you're listening to LearnStroke.
Correct.
Okay.
Sir, your next class is at 6 p.m.
Next class?
Students are waiting.
Next class. I have a meeting, I have to go to meet the doctor. I have a lot of things. I don't have time for this.